one of my all-time favorite American correspondents. Worked with him for a long time now. We're growing old gracefully, disgracefully together. It's the one and only Garland Nixon, radio talk show host and political analyst exemplar. Garland, welcome back to the show. Looking fab as always. I was talking earlier about the fact that people are unlikely to forgive and forget the American and British and other Western politicians who made all of the last 6 months possible. Am I being optimistic? Do you see a possibility of the war ends tonight or tomorrow or this week, that Joe Biden can recover, that the stooges in the Congress, the Senate that have made all this possible, that people will turn a page and go back to supporting them?
No. In fact, I don't even think that the protesters will stop protesting. I think people now understand that what's needed in occupied Palestine is justice. And though this is a grave injustice, and though this is a horrific act that's happening, that when it stops, that will not automatically mean justice. I think the Biden administration, I think the Democratic Party would like to believe that when the kinetic war stops, that people will accept that they've done the right thing and they're moving on. I think they're even going to try to, pretend as though they're the good guys now because they stopped a horrible genocide. But in talking to people and listening to, the callers on my various radio talk shows, what I hear is a fury. In fact, as I've said before, I've had callers literally call into my show in Washington, D.C., lifelong Democrats, and say to me these exact words: I apologize. I was wrong. You were right about the Democrats. So I think the Democratic Party has been exposed. Simple as that. They've been exposed for the beast that they are.
Now, coming up this week is a motion in New York before the United Nations to immediately admit the state of Palestine to full membership of the United Nations. No sane person could oppose that, but doesn't strike me that will achieve anything practically all that much. What's your view?
I certainly agree with you. And since no sane person could oppose it, that certainly means that the U.S. delegation will oppose it, because certainly, if we've learned anything over the last 6 months, is there's not a sane soul in the empire of imbeciles. But you are right. Again, what we need is a recognition of what Israel is. People understand that these Palestinians are, they are the people that were in this land and that they have a right to justice. What people have to understand is that Israel is not a rational country, that it has become, a brutal, vicious country. Even internally, it is in chaos. The people in Israel, though they are in favor of this massacre, even they recognize that their leadership is out of control. So until we start to look at the fiends that run Israel and how this happened, we cannot resolve this issue, because they will not act rationally, even if the UN and the United States says you've got to do things a different way. They don't have another option.
The effort is being made to lay the blame at the door of Netanyahu, isn't it? That if not for this aberrant monster, we would not be in this situation. But you and I both know that's completely false, that this situation has been extant for 3/4 of a century, that this is just the latest, the most violent, surely, the most blood-soaked, definitely, but it's just the latest in a 76 years of massacre.
Yes, well, the American people, if you go to the protests, which I go to, a number of the various protests, the media hides how many there are, but there are any number of websites that show that daily, particularly on the weekends, there are blockages of bridges and occupying the New York Times or wherever. If you go to those protests, you rarely ever see a picture of Benjamin Netanyahu. I think the American people recognize that Joe Biden is and I'm going to use this word loosely, at the helm. I don't think we really believe that he's at the helm, but certainly he is. He represents being at the helm, and I think most people in America understand that Joe Biden does, in fact, support the brutality that's going on in occupied Palestine. So I think that the American people, at least, I can't speak outside of it, blames Joe Biden. They see Joe Biden and his team as the culprits here. So their attempt to shift the blame over to Benjamin Netanyahu and then get out of the way and pretend as though they're the good guys because they stopped this hideous man from doing his evil things, that's not going to go far with the American people.
I've been following this thing on social media, AIPAC Tracker, which very helpfully gives you a little vignette of these stooges in your parliament, Congress, Senate, and how much money they've had from Israel supporting organizations and individuals. Joe Biden, by the way, is the world record holder. He's received more than $5 million for, and not talking about his presidential funds, him, for his own races, received $5 million from Israel. These people have purchased the American political class, haven't they?
Well, absolutely. You know, their funds have, like an octopus, gotten into all parts of the American political system, and now they control it. I think that the issue of finances are, in a broad way, are going to be one of the most significant discussions in the electoral season going into 2024. Everything from the money going to the politicians to control them. Additionally, AIPAC has pledged $100 million to take out a certain number of members of Congress who are opposing, at least to some extent, their actions in Israel. And this is also important. The United States is spending $400 million to build a base on the island of Yap, an island so small that it's not even on the map. $500 million for a base in the Philippines. They're building bases in Finland. They're building bases in Sweden. Now they've announced they're building a base in Argentina. And in fact, Lockheed Martin has now, people can look this up, they've now gotten a contract to look into building a train tracks on the moon. I have a bridge, look, maybe 12 minutes from my house right now, by probably less than that if I take my boat and run around there, 12 minutes from my house to the Key Bridge. And that they're telling us it's going to take 10 years to get this bridge up. And from the looks of things, they will have finished their train tracks on the moon before we get our bridge built back here in the United States. Americans are realizing that when it comes to finances, our ruling class, it's not even money laundering anymore. It's debt laundering. And what people recognize is this. The definition of a debt is what? It's a claim on future earnings. They are spending our money for the next 50 years on war, on mayhem, on everything except us.
Now, as I said in my monologue, it now looks certain that it's Biden versus Trump. The efforts to criminalize, jail, put off the ballot of Donald Trump have failed. It's too late now. The die is cast. I'm going to ask you what every non-American asks all the time. With 333 million people, with all of your achievements as a people, all that expertise and brilliance and industry and success in the United States, how do you end up with a final bill, which the top of that bill is Trump versus Biden? It's almost impossible to believe these are the best two people that you could produce.
Yeah, well, I think what we're looking at is the tension between the American ruling class and the working class, and of course the concept of democracy. Because in the concept of democracy, the masses would choose the candidates, and what we're seeing is that the candidates are chosen before the people get an opportunity to vote in the final vote in November. So it shouldn't be surprising that a country where the state represents the ruling class, not only represents them in opposition to the working class. A government generally tells the poor, we're going to protect you from the rich, tells the rich, we're going to protect you from the poor. But we now in America understand that the government works in opposition to the working class. And we're through this all, Americans aren't even sure 100% if those two will be the candidates, because Joe Biden, let's face it, that guy's got one foot in the grave and the other on a banana peel. There is no, guarantee that he's going to live till November, much less win it. And Donald Trump, of course, they're charging him with everything but mopery on the high seas. There's no guarantee that they won't, do the unthinkable to stop him. So Americans are, even yet that you say it's going to be Joe Biden and Donald Trump, I think a lot of Americans are wondering what machinations the ruling class are going to use ultimately to possibly see Nikki Haley versus Gavin Newsom or something crazy like that. Most Americans are not as sure as the people outside of America that these will be the final two candidates.
Lastly, Garland, and I'm always grateful for your time and wisdom, it looks like the Ukraine war is moving rather more swiftly to an end also. The proposition is being made to Zelensky. Blinken said it this very day, that Ukraine's going to have to make some territorial compromises. The idea of a beach party on Crimea feels like a very long time ago. They are getting everyone ready, aren't they, for in the hope that Russia will stop advancing, stop fighting, stop conquering more Ukrainian territory in exchange for some kind of deal, some kind of territorial compromise. Are the American people being told about this? Or is this being done like the ditching of the Afghan government not that long ago, something that will happen in the night?
Well, a couple of things. Number one, the American people, if you look in the American media, they're getting the same old rhetoric about, Russia's losing 50 planes a day and Ukraine is still, scrappy and they're holding on. Here and there, you will find the occasional more realistic article about this thing. The problem is that in order to come to some kind of a diplomatic end to this conflict, it will require two sides that are reasonable, two sides that are honest, right? I think the Russians understand that they can't trust the neocons. I think the world understands, looking at Gaza, you can't trust these people. They had a Minsk agreement. They've had the Istanbul agreement, both of which were violated by the neocons. I don't think Russia will believe anything that the neocons say in a deal. The only deal that Russia would accept would be what we call a money in hand deal. I will give you this or do this right now first in return for that. So I think the neocons would love to get a deal on their terms. I don't think they'll be able to act rationally and bend enough to give a deal to Russia. So I think Russia understands this. And I think Russia realizes that ultimately they're going to have to impose their will on NATO, and I think they're prepared to do this, and I think they will. I do think that NATO is doing a lot of, Macron and crew, they're doing a lot of bluffing. I think that's all about trying to get themselves some firm ground for negotiation. But I think that in reality, 1,500, 2,000 Frenchmen in Ukraine is not going to stop 500,000 Russian soldiers, and they understand that.
I said finally, but I can't resist, because it just came back to me. Janet Yellen, who does a mean line in kowtowing. She doesn't seem to know that in China you don't kowtow. That happens in Japan. But hey, they all look alike, don't they? She was kowtowing in Beijing, asking the Middle Kingdom to stop producing so much because the West couldn't keep up. Is that getting coverage in America? Is that not deeply humiliating for the Biden administration?
No, in fact, you have to dig for that. You can find that she went to, in our media, you can find that Janet Yellen went to China, and you'll see something like, she stood up to the Chinese or the Chinese Communist Party or something like that. But the fact of the matter is, what Janet Yellen did was she went to China and said, your system works better than ours. Can you be a little bit more like us so we'll have a chance? She went there and admitted to the world that Western neoliberal capitalism cannot compete with the Chinese system. And I think the Chinese said, thanks, have a nice day, see you later. And by the way, we're not buying your your bonds anymore.
Hallelujah. Some fools say there's no God, Garland. Thanks very much for joining us on the mother of all talk shows. Very much obliged to you.